and welcome to The How, the podcast about humans of Wharton.
Today,
We're thrilled to have
Akshay Mansukhani
join us, Wharton MBA 2004. Akshay, welcome.
Thank you, Eleanor. Very excited to be part of the podcast and go 2004.
So, for our audience, a little context. Some of you may have seen this podcast episode with Brian Nichols, and Brian mentioned Akshay as the youngest kid in our class because he went straight from undergrad to the MBA, and here he is, the youngest kid.
I'm trying to look young.
Akshay, how was it for you to be the young kid in the class?
It was a little bit intimidating at the start, but then I realized that the MBAs don't bite. On the contrary, they buy me drinks, so it was perfect. And at the start, I was my first month. I was not even 21. I was 20 years old.
Oh my
So it
God.
was interesting going for drinks. And the day I turned 21 was September 17th. So a few weeks into class, and somebody, I think Hiranya, sent an email out before the day started, before classes, that please wish Akshay, and she sent it to the whole cohort. And the looks I got that day when I entered class were, pretty funny. But yeah, all is well, and I really loved my cohort F and the rest of the business school class, and yeah, lot good times. I can share the story on how that happened, but it was definitely a very intense few years because I needed to get all my credits done in 5 years. So that's that's what I did.
Wow. Do you want to share the story?
Sure. So my community is the Sindhi community, which is Sindh is the largest state, I think, in Pakistan, and we were the Hindus that basically had to leave during partition, and my whole family came to India, and my side of the community, the Amil Sindhis, are the educated group, lawyers, accountants that typically used to travel with the king back many hundreds of years ago. And so, as a little kid, I asked my mother, why is it that you have an MBA, a master's degree? And she said, in our community, if you don't have a master's degree, it's not good. You need to get that level of respect. So my first day as a 17-year-old kid with my parents at Wharton counseling, I went up and I said, hey, there's this MBA program. How do I get into it? And the gentleman, Mr. Bill Whitney, who was my Joseph Wharton Scholar advisor, said that, look, you should do something entrepreneurial. You should also get X number of credits under your belt before your junior year, and then go ahead and talk to me, after a couple of years. And so that's exactly what I did. I didn't come in with any credits from India, so I did 6-7 classes a semester, and tried to start two companies. One of them was with a bunch of Wharton MBAs, patenting expirationless options. So underlying strike price, volatility, interest rate, all the same, but there's no expiration on the options. And there was a State Street ruling at the end of the late 90s where you could patent a financial idea, and that's exactly what we did. And unfortunately, buyers and sellers were not able to agree on a price because the sellers wanted a lot more value than what the buyers wanted to pay. However, we were finalists at the Wharton business plan competition, and I got some recognition in the MBA community, and that was partly kind of at play in terms of getting into the MBA program. So my fourth year undergrad was my first year MBA, and at least in the MBA, I could get the credits from my undergrad. But yeah, that's the quick story.
Wow. That's pretty incredible, Akshay. I did not know that you did both in 5 years.
Yes, it was the MBA classes were much, I would say, a little bit more relaxed, and because there was a great non-disclosure policy. I was very lucky that because my undergrad was with my MBA, I didn't have to disclose my undergrad grades at all, and so all I wrote was being a Joseph Wharton scholar, and that actually helped me because being a Joseph Wharton scholar, as coming into my freshman year, I was allowed to do MBA classes. So my first few years, I did many MBA classes as an undergrad. So that's how I met this group. Uh, Jason Bremen, who was 1 year, I think a couple of years my senior, and he was working on this with a bunch of MBA students, and they roped me in as an undergrad. They tried to haze me a little bit, but all is good.
How did you connect with your classmates who were at least 5 to 7, maybe 10 years your senior?
So my Joseph Wharton counselor, Marty Asher, who was an MBA professor, was one day took me for lunch and asked me, "How are you liking the MBA class?" And I said, "Sir, it's the same class as our undergrad class, so I'm getting a little bit bored." And so he basically said, "Look, what would you do to do it? What would you do different?" And I said, "Look, it was a macroeconomics class, and we were discussing America and America and America." And I said, "Look, there's a world outside of America, and we've learned these principles of macroeconomics from you. And if you would like, I'm happy to make a presentation to the class on another economy, maybe the Japanese economy. And he said, "Absolutely, go for it." And so the next class, I made a presentation, wore a suit, went up to the front of the class, and made a presentation. I'm sorry about that. And and at the end of the class, uh, Jason Bremen. And so the presentation starts, and a Japanese student who was an MBA to test me asked me, there was a crash in the market in Japan. What was the cause of the crash? And I remember it was an oversupply of commercial real estate, which was what started the whole crash. And that's what I said. And I guess I impressed this room of MBAs where after the class got over, Jason Bremen came up to me and said, "Look, here's my card. And I would love to start a company with you. We're trying to patent these expirationless options." And I said, "Great. I'm an undergrad. I don't have a card, but happy to chat more. Although I'm really busy right now with classes, so I don't know if I can do this startup thing." And he was very persistent, and one thing led to another. But the funny thing is that Thursdays was the end of our Wharton classes, and they used to purposely schedule meetings at 8 a.m. on Friday morning to make sure that my Thursday evening would not be a fun evening. But yeah, that's how I met with Jason, and then he introduced me to the rest of the MBAs.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason is great.
Yes, he is. Yeah, Jason introduced me to the MBA program, to UBS, where I worked for many years, and then to my current business partner, Suneet, who also went to Wharton 2001, and we've been working together for the last 12 years. And I introduced Jason to Everstone here in India, and he headed their fundraising practice. And I think today they're the largest homegrown private equity fund in India with close to 4 billion in assets. And Jason played an integral part in the capital raising efforts for Everstone.
Wow. That's the power of Wharton connections, huh?
Absolutely, it is very powerful. A lot of people ask me in terms of how we've been able to raise assets, and in large part my answer is the Wharton network. It's almost impossible to not get a response if you send an email out to somebody who's from Wharton and you're very professional. I would say over 90-95% of the time you get a response, and people will chat with you. I think the Wharton Connect tool is incredible.
Cool. And what have you been up to since?
So since Wharton, I guess the most important decision in your life is who you get married to, and then maybe the second most important decision in your life is what you decide to do with your life. And so happily married with two kids, Amisha and I hit our 10-year wedding anniversary a few months ago, and
Congrats.
thank you. And Mila is 5, little girl, and Sasha is 2, little boy. And on the work front, taking off from my Wharton experience doing derivatives. I worked at UBS's derivative desk as part of capital markets. So I did everything outside of an IPO and a follow-on. So pre-IPOs, pipes, private converts, uh, call spreads on convertible bonds. This was 2004 to 2008. This is the point in time when the big banks were allowed to use their prop capital to make investments. So we invested some 600 million alongside capital transactions we were raising capital for. We raised, I think, some $5 billion across a host of transactions. I was promoted to director again at a young age. There was a lot of learning. I was between UBS's New York office and their Stamford, Connecticut office. And then in the financial crisis, I got a phone call from my father, who started a white goods business, a television manufacturing business in India called as Onida, ONIDA. At one point, we had 20% of the country's market share in televisions, and now we do air conditioners and washing machines. And in 2006 and 7 and 8, had invested in homegrown private equity funds in India, a large part of his personal savings. And unfortunately at the time, I guess now fortunately, realized his mistake very quickly and asked me to fix the problem by coming home and allocating the family capital towards the public markets. Because if you make a mistake on the public markets, at least you can take your capital out. On the private equity funds, we were locked in for close to a decade. And so at the beginning of 2009, I was running around meeting with as many people as I could in the financial community. And through Jason and the Wharton network, met with Sumit. Sumit was Wharton MBA 2001. And at McKinsey, he founded their investment advisory office, doing investment work for the big PE funds that did not have offices on the ground. This was 2002 to 2007. And connected with another McKinsey partner and basically founded Malabar, which was focused on small and mid cap value investing in India. I met him at 4 million in at assets. However, more importantly, his philosophy and thinking about investing was so spot on that when I requested to make an investment from the family level, he was keen for me to join and help on both investments and capital raising. And that's what I've been doing since October of 2009. We've done, I think, some 15.0 net dollar returns on our long-term share class, in spite of the rupee weakening around 4% over the last 13 years. Our asset base is around 1.1 billion at the moment, and we are the largest investors in our own funds. Some 27% of capital is team and initial partner capital, and the initial partners include value partners from Hong Kong, who's well recognized. I think they're over 10 billion in assets, and the Oppenheimer family from New York as well. Phil and Carl Oppenheimer, are on our board. But yeah, that's a quick kind of summary. But that's what I've been doing for the last 12 years.
Akshay, this is pretty amazing. That's American dream manifested.
Yes, it's definitely a dream come true. But it's in terms of where things are at the moment, I almost feel like there's so much more room to go. The Indian GDP has done some 12, 13% nominal over the last decade, and at 3 trillion compared to China at 14 trillion and America at 25 trillion. I think we have a long way to go, and the GDP can grow at 12, 13% for the next decade, if not 2 decades. And our company's earnings are doing some 25% weighted average earnings growth. The last few years is where the portfolio fundamentals have been. And we're turning over our portfolio once every 6, 7 years. So it's a very low turnover, old school kind of long term buy and hold strategy. but we do tremendous amount of diligence. So I think last year we clocked some 2,000 plus individually documented calls and meetings. But I can talk for hours about what we do.
And what does it mean to you to be a good husband and a good father?
So I would say one is over communication, right? I think if you spend less time talking or less time hanging out, so as a husband, I'm scheduled for one date night a week. Sometimes it's two date nights a week, but at the bare minimum, and spending a lot of time. And it's my father's always told me it's the most important decision of your life is who you get married to, and I think being intellectually on the same wavelength, growing as you go forward in life, and then having common goals in some way. I would say the one thing that Amisha and I love to do is travel, and we've been different parts of the world, and then now taking care of the kids, and then on the children front, the one there's so many things in the first few years of life that you need to get right in terms of making sure there's enough sleep, having a stable household at home, making sure that there's a lot of stimulation, letting the kids be themselves, and empathizing with them is also very important. So I think the first few years is very important in building that kind of brain development, and then going forward, being a friend. I did not realize how fast I would have three bosses. My wife was my boss, and then now my daughter and my son have started ordering me around, and it's beautiful. I thought I was teaching them empathy when I got on a flight yesterday to leave from America to India. My daughter packed a box of chocolates and gave it to me for the road. She's 5 years old, and said, "Please have this, over the next few days, and remember me every time you have a chocolate." Yeah, so that's what I'm dealing with.
Oh, wow, that's so sweet
Yeah.
and so
So
thoughtful.
yes, thank you. And the last thing I would say is I learned from my parents. Till today, I get a lot of support from them on everything I do, including rapping me on my knuckles if I'm not doing something right. So being open minded, I think, is very important, and being open minded to feedback is important. So I think I look to do with my children the same what my parents have done with me is support, until your dying breath.
Tell us about your family. Where did you grow up? What did your parents do?
Sure. So my father was a chief engineer on the Indian Merchant Navy, 1979, 1980. He got promoted very quickly, and then was worked for international companies doing basically in the chief engineer role. He saved 10,000 dollars in today's kind of capital, and started this white goods business, Onida, with my mom's sister's husband, who had the license to sell electronics in India. And back in the day, they were we used to just import, put our name on it, and then slowly started manufacturing. And so today we assemble on the television and the panel side. We manufacture on the washing machine side, and we pretty much buy on the air conditioning side. But with him, what I realized and I learned was the value of hard work, tremendous relationship management, because we had a kind of a R&D JV with the Japan Victor company, JVC, for many decades. And so we got till today, our products are known as probably the best quality products in the country. Through the pandemic, I learned that the impact that my mother had on my life was a lot more than I realized. Because even though she's a housewife, all her advice over the years has really come about. For example, she's always maintained that whatever you do in life, have a balance. And sometimes, I tend to go, overboard, including how often I kiss my kids. And so, tempering it is important. And so, both, and so we grew up in a simple home in Bombay, and then slowly moved into a kind of a better apartment when I was 10 years old, and then at 20 years old, it was my father's dream to kind of buy an apartment overlooking the ocean in Bombay, because those are the hardest apartments to get, and that has been our journey. And now he's built a beautiful house for himself outside of Bombay. But most importantly, he'll tell you, and my friends will tell you, that given a choice to hang out with my father or me, 10 out of 10 will choose my father, because he's a lot more fun, personality. I try and be fun, but he's actually more fun. And so that's a little bit of the background, and he really got Sumit and I going here in India with some of his capital and his relationship base. So it's been great, and I look forward to asking them questions in the next few weeks. I've bought a few books on their own life journeys, and kind of what has molded their life, because I truly believe that life is a learning curve, going from Charlie Munger. You learn a little bit every day, and so that's kind of my goal in the next few weeks, is to do this kind of interview with my parents.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love it. To become a GP at 28, man, that's...
It was, but sometimes when you see an opportunity and you recognize it and you take advantage of it, I think to me that's what it was. I met Sumit. I realized that if we have a culture of heavy diligence, we have a culture and thinking of long-term investing, we communicate that to our investors, and the market is ready, to be able to take, and be able to generate returns through long-term investing. It was just a combination of things that landed up happening. The first few years were hard, because we were kind of young and just starting out. But as people see that, you see the work you've done, how consistent the portfolio is, the quality of the portfolio, and year after year, sometimes you're doing a good job. I think that persistence pays off.
Yeah, persistence. What else have you learned from this journey?
So I think there's two other big learnings that I have. So one is something called as affirmations, which is the book called The Secret, that I think has been written by, I think, Rhonda Byrne. And what the way it started was, I was at a wedding, as big fat Indian wedding. I'm having a drink with my uncle, who's a Reiki master, and he says, "Let me introduce you to this concept called as affirmations, and you just have to visualize what you want to do in life, and don't worry about the how. Just focus on what it is, and it should not be a will or a should. It is an is statement." And so the next morning I woke up, and I've been doing this now for 15 years. I read the book a year and a half ago, and I have bought and gifted hundreds of copies of that book now, to people. And so my daily affirmations are, I think, close to 40 sentences, a third on attitude, a third on relationships, and a third on life goals and, kind of business oriented things. And when things start coming true, it's very motivating. So, for example, for my father, I had May 31st, 2016. Dad's lipoprotein small a, which is a variation of bad cholesterol, is 40. Is 50. His number was running at 100, and I read that sentence for 4 months. 2 weeks before the deadline, my friend Anup, whose father is a top cardiologist in America, called me up and said, "I have a drug that might help your father." I went, I got it, and his number came down to 50, and half of what it was, and he's been out of the hospital, touch wood, since then. For my children, the day after Mila, or the few months after, Mila was born, I wrote, "Today Mila enjoys her mental, emotional, and spiritual growth." And I was confused between spiritual and psychological. One day after I wrote it down, my cousin, who's at a religious mission outside of Bombay, sends me a bunch of books on parenting. The first book, second page, mental, emotional, spiritual, and psychological, right? And and then for Sasha, my sister, my wife, my daughter, the help at home, everybody said, "You're going to have a second daughter." And I said, "But I already have a daughter, right? I want a son." And so, March 31st, 2019, Amisha is pregnant with our baby boy. And I wrote it on Feb 1st, 60 days. April 2nd, she calls me from the doctor's office in Manhattan and says, "It's a boy." And so that's kind of how I've channeled the energy. So I have return expectations from the fund as well. But I'll give you the last one. On the fundraising side, we launched our mid cap fund in 2018, and so to June 1st, 2019, Malabar Select Fund AUM is $175 million. On November 1, 2018, for 30 days, I read that affirmation. We got 171 million of commitments in 30 days. So that's
No
yeah,
way.
that's the one big learning I have is if you can visualize things, don't worry about how. Sometimes they just happen. It's going into your subconscious mind, and everything you do is kind of geared up, for that. And then the second big learning I have is to reflect on the previous day or the previous week and write about everything that happened and what you learned from it. And so this morning I spent an hour and a half writing about the last 10 days, thinking about each day, kind of how it went, what I did, and kind of talking and addressing the learnings. It's in some way both of these exercises are very powerful because when you don't do them, you realize what you're missing out. And in so many cases we have human interactions with people, and if you don't think about the interaction afterwards, sometimes you forget about what could be a follow-up or something you learned. So these are my two big learnings as well in the last along this journey.
So it's persistence, proactive manifesting,
Yes,
and reflection.
I couldn't have said it better.
That's pretty profound, Akshay. And so it sounds like you've made this affirmation business, and now like Instagram is full of this, affirm this, affirm that. But it sounds like you made it into discipline. You do it daily.
Yes, daily. The first thing I wake up, I go through all my affirmations, and if I ever get stressed out, or I kind of need a pick me up, I'll just open my wallet, pick out my couple of pages, and just read through it. And so I think the attitude is also very important. Today I am positive, humble, witty, and grateful. Right, so that's how I used to start all my days, and it's yet my number 4 sentence on my affirmation list. And then a couple of years ago, it was today I am so happy, and the second sentence is today I spread happiness. And now that's number 2 and number 3. And the first sentence I have every day as I start my day is today I'm in an open state of mind. And I feel that's the most powerful one because you have no idea what's going to happen in the day. And if you have set in your thinking, you're not going to be open to what might be coming towards you. So that's kind of the way I start my day every day.
Wow. It's so true. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Correct. So that's a little bit of an issue because I believe I'm a very thin man, but my wife doesn't think so.
Akshay, you do spread happiness. So we can check off that affirmation.
Yes. And by the way, laughing is also very important. very, very important. It's so there are these laughing clubs, and I didn't realize how. Yeah,
What?
in Bombay, there's these laughing clubs. I've never been. I've seen videos. I'm a little embarrassed, but people just go into the in the morning. They wake up and they go to the field, and a bunch of people just laughing their hearts out. It I think it's something to do with getting on kind of the happy vibration kind of frequency, something to that effect. But I believe it.
I do too. Yeah, it definitely works. If you can force yourself to laugh, like if you actually have enough perspective to realize that this is what you need to do.
Yes.
Like when you're sad or depressed or bummed out, how do you actually like take yourself out of that situation, and how do you manage to shift perspective?
Yes, yes. I think the simplest way of doing it is to think about what's important to you, and you realize if what you're dealing with is, important or is not so important. If it is not so important, you realize it's not so important. If it is important, you I think about how to deal with the issue. And I never go to sleep without thinking about what I'm going to do to address something. Even if I don't do it that day, I'll have a plan, in my mind. So that's kind of one way of doing it. But to start off with, I think if you have people with positive energy around you, and you're careful as to who you give interviews to, you can be very happy, as you go along. So I think it's a combination of a couple of things. Making sure that you have the right approach, and sometimes in difficult situations is how you deal with them that really stands out. So I think that's and also in terms of perspective, the one thing that I've been doing, but this year I've really ramped up, is reading. When you read, it really provides an insight into what other people are going through, what they've been through, and makes you realize also how small you are in the grand scheme of things. And as long as you have food to eat and you have a place to sleep, and you have your loved ones around you and your friends around you, there's not that much more really you want in life to stress you out. But I live in India and Bombay, and things can get stressful here. So we do need to have ways of dealing with it. And one of the books I read, which I highly recommend to everybody, The Art of Thinking Clearly, by Dobelli, which is the 100 most common biases we have as humans in our thinking. And it's just awareness. I think more awareness you have, the more you appreciate and put things in context.
Cool. How has the pandemic been for you, and what impact did it have, and has it had on your family?
Sure. So, leaving aside, I think we've distant. I guess not. On my side of the family, we had a couple of deaths in the distant family. My wife's side, there were a couple of closer deaths, and so that was unfortunate. And leaving that aside, I would say the one is appreciating spending time with each other, and having the right infrastructure, homes to be able to do that. I think we got lucky in that we have houses outside of the city, and in America we rented, in Long Island. So I mean, many learnings from the pandemic. Don't need to eat that much food to survive. Don't need to meet your friends as often as needed. May not need to go into the office as much as earlier. And I think spending time reading again is a big learning from the pandemic. So I think there's a lot of takeaways that the pandemic was able to do to, I guess, many humans by just slowing down the pace of life, and giving people the time to think. In my line of business, on the investment side, I believe that, like asset management, your returns are based on asset class exposure. Similarly, as an investment professional, the division of time between reading, thinking, and speaking, uh, if you're able to monitor that, uh, potentially results in how successful you are, on the investment side. So clearly, in my case, more reading and thinking and less talking helps.
Akshay, I wanted to ask you about middle life crisis. Have you had any, and how did it go?
I've been doing these affirmations for 15 years, and I guess the only kind of pain point I had was when my fund first got started. My partner started in 2007. I started 2009. We invested the family capital in 2010. The Oppenheimer family came on board after 1 year of talking to them in 2012. And then we raised some capital domestically in India in 2013. And then finally in 2014, a very reputed blue chip international organization invested with us. So for my partner, it was 7 years. For me, it was 5 years, where really it was very difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I would say that was probably the kind of most challenging piece, where on my first year wedding anniversary, after talking to this group for a year, and was thinking that they were walking down the line of an investment, the first day I get to down south to a beach resort. Right before I go to dinner, I check my email, and there's an email from Phil and Carl Oppenheimer saying, "Hey, we love you, but we're not making the investment." And I told my wife, I said, "Listen, just give me some time. I need to push this dinner out for an hour." And I sent them a note in terms of exactly what they said, what I said, they said, I said in the last 12 months. And I said, just tell me if I did anything wrong through all of these interactions, and I will let you go. Right? And they responded the next day saying, "Please ignore our earlier email. We're making the investment." Right? So in terms of, and then along the way, taking a zero salary, keeping your cost structure very low, and going out and getting smaller checks, whatever it took, to get the business going. I would say if I look back, probably that was the only place where I thought it would happen faster, but it didn't happen as fast. And then on the back end, it's absolutely fine. But sometimes, when you're starting out, it's much harder than you think. But if you have the right attitude, the right people around you, you have a cost structure that can withstand a few years of kind of lower income. Maybe that, at least in our case, that's how it went.
Wow, 5 years is a long time.
Yes. 5 years, long time. Not making too much capital, but if you believe in what you're doing, it's much easier.
Wow. So is that what kept you going? Just believing in yourself or believing in your investment thesis? What was it?
I think the people around me. I think my partner Sumit is 9 years my senior. My other partner Ashish is same age. He's our head of my. Sumit is the portfolio manager. Ashish is our head of research. To be able to take Buffett Munger value investment principles, apply it to India, do a bunch of diligence, and focus on the earnings of portfolio companies, leaving aside the noise and the stock market movements and the price movements. If you could focus on that and see that time and again, if company earnings are strong, the stock prices tend to kind of move in line with where the earnings are. So I think, and also temperament, because the Indian small and mid cap space is volatile. I remember just soon after I started in December of 2011, I think we were down some 36% in 2011, and again now 18 and 19, we had two negative years, and then the first 3 months of 2020 we were down some 35%. Having the temperament to be calm, talk to our investors in that the fundamentals are great. There's been a dislocation, and it's just a matter of time. And that's exactly what's happened time and again. So we were up some 43% calendar year last year. This year we're up 31%. We have two companies going public that should add another 15% of returns. But today is maybe things are more stable and we're on a manageable asset base. Back in the day, it was much harder. But I would say it's a combination of people around you doing the right things, opportunities, panning out, and you've seen them pan out, and having the right investor base who's patient, with you as well. I think it's a combination of all of these things that has got us here.
Who are your favorite value investors?
So, I think from a value investor's perspective, I think that you have to look at it as a combination of global developed market investors as well as developing market investors. So the from a learning perspective, while Buffett is kind of business oriented, and he provides a lot of perspective, I think Charlie Munger is a lot more colorful in the way he communicates and resonates, a lot, with us. And then I guess in the emerging markets, Hill House, which is an Asia fund, fairly successful in terms of being able to invest into new age companies faster. I think it's some combination of that, the old school and the new school, because the kind of typical balance sheet type investing has proven not to work in India. So I think if you're aware of that, it may have worked in America, but has not worked in India. And then, Buffett says, if when choosing between the reputation of an industry and the reputation of management, always pick the industry, because it doesn't make a difference how good, the management is. The industry will always win. While we accept that, in India, most of the companies are owner owned and driven. And we found that the A plus management is sometimes outperforming on fundamental earnings growth. And we should basically objectively kind of classify our management. So, on operations, on scalability of operations, capital allocation, corporate governance, passion, and cognitive function, which is how open are the risks, how open is the management to accepting the risks that are there in a business. In each of these 6 categories, we have 20 to 70 questions that we try and answer to objectively quantify, what we believe management is doing, and it has a material impact. So I think taking the learnings and applying it to kind of our world, where it is today, I think is what we're trying to do.
Cool. And in life, do you have any role models that you'd like to highlight?
So when I started down this journey of what my friend gave me a book list of some 500 books, and I got through many of them. But when you read about Sam Wharton and you read about Richard Branson, and I talked to my own father, who's a successful businessman, what I realized is they are they are passionate about a certain kind of business. They are smart. They are able to work smart in identifying the opportunity, and then building an organization to specifically address the opportunity is the way many entrepreneurs have done it. So yeah, I would say a fellow Wharton grad, Elon Musk, is not a bad role model. He's very passionate. Although I was just finished reading his book a few weeks ago, and they were saying that what Elon does is work sometimes 23 hours a day, when others may work only 21 hours a day. I don't believe I can get to 23 hours a day at any point in my life, but at least there's some aspiration. So yeah, if I had to pick one, I think Elon Musk and building an organization around what he believes is a great role model to have.
And Akshay, we usually ask this question in our podcast. To me, Wharton is the place blank. How would you complete that sentence?
Where I lost my virginity.
Oh man. Once again, Definitely not a lot of our classmates can complete it the same way. That's a unique answer so far.
Good. I'm happy.
Yeah, cool. Akshay, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story.
Elena, I really appreciate your taking the time. It's been great.